Hello, everybody. It's Father Edward Looney back with you with another movie interview. And so there's a new film coming. A lot of people saw Sound of Freedom. It came from Angel Studios. It was kind of the movie that was all the talk this past summer that got lots of conversations going. And Angel Studios has another film coming to the theaters. And for me, I know it's one that's been a long time coming. I've seen social media posts for, I think, a few years. And so I'm very excited today to be speaking with the director of The Shift, Brock Heasley. And so he's going to share a little bit about The Shift, how it came to be, and a few questions that I had after I pre-screened it in advance of its release in the theater. So thanks so much, Brock, for joining me to talk about The Shift today.
No, I thank you so much, Father Edward, for the opportunity to talk about it. It has been a long time coming, so I'm
Yeah,
excited to talk about it.
I think a lot of people followed Angel Studios and kind of the projects they were working on because for a long time, The Chosen, that was who they were
Hmm.
associated with. And so I think that's how I became familiar with it, simply because, I liked The Chosen. And then it's like, oh, this is the next thing they're working on. And so I follow the social media and have seen the clips for a long time. And I think the whole film was crowd funded, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if that's right, if my memory serves me correctly. But I
A
guess,
decent portion of it, yeah, a decent portion of it was crowdfunded.
yeah, could you just share a little bit of the origin story of The Shift and really how it came from a concept to reality?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of science fiction. It's my favorite genre of film, and I can still remember back in 1985 when my dad came home. He was just super excited, and he's like, "Brock, I've seen this movie, and you gotta check it out." And he told me the title, and I couldn't even understand the title, but he said, "You've got to come and see Back to the Future with me." And so, a lot of my earliest memories are with my dad. Honestly, are like going to the movies and seeing science fiction films. I saw Return of the Jedi 5 times in the theaters when I was a kid. I was 6 years old. And so, but then my faith is also very important to me, and it always has been. I grew up in a family that whose faith was, we went to church every Sunday, and faith was a huge part of our lives. And I came to an understanding of my relationship with God, about when I was a teenager, and it's something that has just always been very important to me. But these two things don't usually come together. We don't usually see science fiction and faith coming together in any kind of meaningful way. And in fact, a lot of people who love science fiction or who are into science will try to eschew faith and put it off to the side. And I just never really understood that, because I've always seen science fiction as such a great vehicle for talking about things through allegory and through metaphor, and just through looking at our world through a different lens. To me, that's the great value of science fiction. And so I thought, well, why not faith? And so in 2015, I got a group together, and we made this little short film called The Shift. And it was a 20-minute long short film, and it combined science fiction and the idea of multiple realities with the idea of how the devil tempts us. And so it was kind of a man versus devil story, which is something I was really interested in. I was thinking a lot at the time about, how does the devil work, and what are his tricks? Kind of a Screwtape Letters approach was kind of what that short film did. Few years later, the Angel Studios, who were just gearing up The Chosen, they saw that short film, and they thought, well, here is something that is really interesting. And they were just getting going. And tonally, what was going on in that short film was not terribly dissimilar from tonally what was happening in The Chosen. And I think one of the reasons people love The Chosen, it's not because it's telling the story of Jesus, which we've seen 100 times before. It's telling it in a different way. And it's telling it with a seriousness and a sincerity and an honesty that I think Angel Studios saw was present within this fictional sci-fi story that I was doing. And so it was something where they brought me aboard and said, let's help you fund this and turn this into a feature film. And 5 years later, it took a while. You take an original sci-fi concept, which people are not used to mixing with faith, and that's going to be a communication evolution. And it took us a while to help people understand what we were doing and to get them excited about it. But here we are today, and people did. They figured it out and they latched on.
Yeah, and we've talked a little bit about The Chosen. We've dropped that name a few times, and you have some of the actors and actresses from The Chosen
Mm-hmm.
who are a part of the film. So, who are some of those familiar faces that people might see?
Yeah, so our female lead is the amazing Elizabeth Tavish, who plays Mary Magdalene in The Chosen, and she gives, I mean, I'm biased, but I think it's the best performance of her career. I think she did is so tremendous and so very different from what she does as Mary in The Chosen. We've also got Paras Patel, who plays Matthew in The Chosen, and he plays a character by the name of Rajit, who is kind of a mysterious person within the film, so I won't give too much away about him. And then we also have Jordan Walker Ross, who plays Little James on The Chosen, and he shows up in a really fun cameo role that I can't wait for people to see. And all three of them, to their credit, have crafted such different characters from what we are used to seeing them in as The Chosen. So I'm really, really excited for people to see kind of another side to their talents.
Yeah, just a few moments ago too, you mentioned C.S. Lewis, and we're talking about kind of sci-fi dystopian genre. I think C.S. Lewis wrote some space trilogy, so he kind of dabbled
Yeah.
in that. But my understanding is that the shift too, as you mentioned, C.S. Lewis and the Screwtape Letters, there's kind of like
Mhm.
Job-esque feel, right? Like, is this supposed to tell
Yeah.
the story of the book of Job in a contemporary way?
Well, anybody walking into this and expecting the book of Job is going to wonder what in the world the gunplay is about. But what we have done is that very much in the writing of this, I'm very inspired by the book of Job, and that came out of some experiences in my own life. I've had some, and I think most of us have had Job-like periods where we've gone through some things, haven't really seen a whole lot of hope. God seems to be silent, and we're wondering what this is all for. And so, drawing upon those experiences and looking at this film, um, I realized there was a real opportunity here to tackle honestly, what I think is one of the trickiest stories in the Bible. Job is a story that a lot of people wrestle with and wonder, well, is God just a jerk? I've heard people say that about the book of Job. Like, is that the point of Job, is to say that God is a jerk? And no, that's not the point of Job. And so, yes, this film, and by the time you're done watching it, I think it's unmistakable, is very much inspired by the book of Job, is dealing with a lot of the same things thematically that the book of Job is dealing with. And I think we have something to say about it. I think we're asking the right questions. This is a film that when you leave it, and I've heard this report from many, many people, it's something that you're thinking about, discussing even the next day. And I love that people are wrestling with these really important things, especially at this time in the world when there is a lot of suffering going on. There's a lot of calamity, and people are really wondering, where is God in all this? And that is exactly the question that our main character, Kevin, is asking throughout the film. And by the end, he does come to something of an understanding. And I'm excited for people to see that.
Yeah, I watched it, I think Saturday night and Sunday as I was getting ready for church and whatnot.
Mhm.
I was thinking about the movie. I'm like, well, why did they do
Yeah.
that? Or, I feel like maybe this was an unresolved issue in the movie. So like I kept thinking about it, I guess. So
Yeah.
main character, this is in the intro, so I don't think it gives too much away, but essentially a car accident seems transports him into this alternate universe and whatnot. So we never go back to the car accident or anything like that because he
Right.
chooses the other path or something like that. I guess I'm trying to understand kind of what we saw in the beginning, reconciling it with how it ends. So
Right.
what could you say about that?
Well, what happens to Kevin is, when you talk about, the name of the movie is The Shift. And when you talk about the idea of a shift and what that is, and you're correct to identify the car accident as a moment in which, our character experiences something, and then that thrusts him into a new circumstance. And in our movie, that new circumstance is actually a dark parallel world. Um, but here's what's notable about that car accident is that he didn't cause it. The car accident happened to him. And that's really what the movie, that's what a shift is. A shift is the things that happen in our life that we have no control over, that are bad. And yet we have the responsibility to respond one way or another, either in faith or with cynicism. And that's what the movie is really trying to get at here, is this idea that we all experience suffering that is not of our own making one way or another. And how are we going to deal with that? There are choices that we can make, but we don't always get to choose our circumstances. The real choice that each one of us can make is, how do we respond? Do we have faith? Do we not? Do we have hope or do we not? That's the real choice that we are all making. And that came out of experiences in my life. My father was shot in an armed robbery when I was 12 years old. He was shot 13 times and he lived. 8 years later, the exact same circumstance repeated itself and he died. Now, that is something that was a huge shift in my life. That was not something that I chose. It wasn't something that he chose, but I have to deal with it. Do I have anger and hatred towards the men who killed him? I mean, that's a choice right there. That's a choice that's been thrust upon me. And I chose to forgive, and I chose to love. And that's a lot of where this movie came from as well, is how is Kevin going to deal with these things that happen to him that he has no control over? And that, to me, if you want to like unlock the code of the movie, I think a lot of it is within that idea right there.
Yeah, it's very powerful. And, it's one of those movies that I think you have to see twice. Like, you go and you experience it. Maybe you'll be a little confused. It's like, what's going on? But then you have to watch it a second time. And then it kind of just all begins to make a little more sense, and you begin to grasp those concepts. So I bet there's going to be repeat watchers of the film.
I would love that. Those are my favorite movies, the ones that beg a second watch, and that when you do watch it the second time, you uncover so much more. This movie really is operating more than anything. It's operating in the realm of allegory, and so a lot of the things that are happening, I think, especially on the second watch, will be apparent, like what it is and why it is. But I will also say that for the first time through, I don't believe that it's so confusing that you're lost. And I don't, we crafted a very emotional narrative, and I've been very encouraged by how many people watch this film, and they do grasp very quickly what is going on, and more than anything, they really key in to this love story. Within all of this is this love story of what Kevin is really trying to get back to, is he's trying to escape this dark parallel Earth in order to get back to his wife. And so much of the movie is about that. And so even if you're thinking, oh man, sci-fi, I'm not, it's not really my bag, or it's just, if they confuse me or whatever, I promise you that this movie is not going to leave you behind. There is an emotional core to this thing that you're going to be able to tap into, and that is where we put most of our energy, to be honest with you. And that is what is going to, I think, excite audiences, especially on the first watch. And then if you want to dig deeper, yeah, there's definitely stuff there.
Yeah, so as a Roman Catholic, we have a crucifix, right? So we often will wear a crucifix,
Right.
just as our religious jewelry. A lot of times a Christian, they might wear a cross. And so no corpus, no body of Jesus, kind of a common symbol. But kind of the shift is introducing another little piece of jewelry, if you will, and it's the empty tomb. So why was that important to incorporate this concept of the empty tomb? And there's a tattoo on one of the people's arms.
Right.
There's the necklace that he gives to Liz Tabish's character. So why the empty tomb? Why incorporate that in the shift story?
Yeah, well, just on a practical storytelling level, I needed some kind of something to identify. What I'm trying to do is not getting into too many spoilers, but I needed some kind of a totem within the film. And if you think about a film like Inception, which uses the spinning top, there's a storytelling mechanic within the film where I did need something like that, some kind of identifier for our guy, so that when that thing popped up, it would be significant, it would mean something to him, and that would kind of propel him on his path. I'm being so vague because I'm trying not to spoil the movie, but so on a practical storytelling level, I needed that. But the empty tomb symbol was actually something, before I was a filmmaker, I was a graphic designer, and it was a symbol that I came up with during that period of my life. And it was something that I thought had a lot of potential, because the cross and the crucifix are such powerful symbols. And they're so iconic. But for me, I think there's more of Christ's story that can be told. And symbols are a very powerful way of telling that story. And of course, the other part of the story is what happens after the cross, which is the tomb that was empty, which is the fulfillment of everything that he said, that he was, and that he did. The empty tomb is the fulfillment of his promises. And it is of course the promise of eternity that each of us gets to partake in as believers on him. And so I just have always wondered why we couldn't have a symbol that represents that as well, this other very crucial part of the story. And so the cross and the empty tomb, when you think about it, they really are the two symbols of Christ within the Bible itself. Those are the two big events. And those are the two events that we look to and say therein lies our salvation. And so taking that symbol, which I think if you can sum up the empty tomb in one word, that word would be hope. And for a movie that is so much about hope, it just fit very naturally into the story that we're telling.
Yeah, and I guess I'm thinking about this whole dystopian reality and parallel universes, et cetera, but in a sense, like the
Hmm.
resurrection kind of unlocks that for us, right? So by defeating death,
Right.
because he lives, well, there is this alternate reality that we call heaven, that one day we'll call home. There is this
Right.
idea that when Jesus returns in glory, that all the dead will rise from the grave, and there'll be a new heaven and a new earth. And even after the resurrection, we see this in the scriptures, that the tombs of the righteous were opened and they came forth from the tombs. So there is some
Mhm.
sort of like parallel alternate reality, I guess you could almost say, connected to the empty tomb and to the fact of Jesus's resurrection.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to think about heaven as a different plane of existence, and I think that's not an entirely inappropriate way to approach it. Now, we don't understand the mechanics of that and how that all works and the layers of reality, and I don't know. And certainly this film is not proposing that multiverse theory is true. I have absolutely no idea. I don't care. It's a storytelling device. But certainly, yes, as Christians, we have come to accept this idea that there is more than just the world that we see around us, that there are other worlds and there is another place where God resides. And if you want to call that an alternate reality or a parallel or whatever you want to call it, the idea that there is more is certainly embedded within what we believe already. I agree with that.
So I know that people who are followers of Angel Studios, you see it already on the social media as we're recording this interview. People are buying tickets. They're doing the same thing that they did for the Sound of Freedom, where they're buying tickets so that they can give them away to people. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I think you're going to have a lot of supporters, people who are already bought in, right? But what's your recommendation to someone who might be on the fringes? Like, should I go see this? Why should they go see it?
I think they should go see it because I think what audiences have been clamoring for is something that's original. I think especially this year with the success of movies like Oppenheimer and Barbie and Sound of Freedom, these are films that do not have franchises attached to them and that audiences flock to. And audiences rejected movies like Mission Impossible and Indiana Jones, both of movies I actually very much enjoyed, but audiences really didn't show up for them. And so I think what people are looking for right now is they're looking for two things. I think we are in a time when people are looking for hope. This movie offers that. And people are looking for an original story. And I promise you've never seen a movie like The Shift. If nothing else, this is an original story inspired by the Book of Job. But believe me, we and you know this, Father Edward. We go off in some different directions with it. But yeah, if you're looking for an original story for a completely new experience at the theater, we definitely have that for you.
So this went from being a 20-minute short that you made a long time ago to now being on
Mm-hmm.
the big screen, and theaters are going to be filled with enthusiasts who want to go see it. What's that like for you as a film director?
Oh, I'll tell you what, I have a hard time not choking up at every screening that we have. It's such a profound, honestly, this is a season of profound gratitude for me. It really is. I know exactly how fortunate I am to be in this position, to see a dream realized like this, to have the sacrifices that my family and so many others have made to bring this film to the screen, to see that fully realized, to see people walking out just just so emotional, coming up to me and taking both of my hands in theirs and just thanking me, and telling me what an effect it's had on them. It's made all of this time and effort very, very much worth it. And I'm just excited that now next, we're going to be going out to a much broader audience once this thing actually hits screens. So yeah, very, very, very grateful.
When is it in theaters? How can people get their tickets? How can they learn more about it?
Yeah, so if you go to angel.com/the shift, you'll be able to see a trailer there, and you'll also see where it is playing near you. And there's a link to go to the tickets right there. If it's not in the theater that you prefer, there's even a button there. You can tap to call or call to request your theater directly and let them know, hey, I want to see the shift with you. So that's angel.com/the shift. December 1st is the day that it hits theaters. Of course, there's going to be a preview night the night before on November 30th. There'll be a couple of showings in the evening if you want to check it out ahead of all of your friends. But yeah, it's everywhere. And December 1st, and then internationally, we are going to be rolling out. I just heard our UK date, but we're not ready to announce that yet. But we are going to be having some type of an international release as well. But US and Canada, December 1st.
Well, how wonderful. Congratulations. It's a great project. And I was speaking to a priest who also had the opportunity to pre-screen it. He does some media work too. And he just said, I really appreciate that it's a different type of storytelling and that it's not like a bad Christian movie, but that it's a wonderful story and wonderfully done. So it's just, it's going to make it's going to shift people's minds and hearts, to use the name of the movie. So great.
I love that.
And encourage people to go see it out December 1st. Thanks so much, Brock, for
Yeah.
joining me today.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.